11 at
No,
1 p.m.
no, I think you're a little later, Marta. I'll text
Oh,
you on it. Is
oh,
that
okay.
okay?
Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
Marta, that was my
No
turn.
problem. I will then mute myself.
Okay.
The screen is fine.
The screen is fine, and we're now live on World Speech Day. And I'm Simon Gibson. I'm the founder of World Speech Day. It's a day to celebrate speeches and speech making with live public events all across the world. And 2 weeks ago, we had events planned in 110 nations, which is fairly unusual, fairly extraordinary. Sadly, events have overtaken us, and we have fewer events. But we also have the joy of experimenting with new ways, and one of those is through live stream. And using live stream to explore public speaking in maybe a slightly different manner. And this session and the next session is devoted to the highly topical theme of transformation. We're going to have speakers from around the world taking very different perspectives on transformation, maybe social, maybe cultural, maybe technological, maybe climate. The first speaker this morning is Oscar de Montigny, who joins us from Italy. Oscar is an innovator and a future thinker. So I'm going to give Oscar the opportunity to give him a little bit of an introduction about himself, because he'll do it far better than me, and then to elaborate on his topic, which is the future beyond the future.
Exactly.
So great pleasure to have Oscar with us, and I'm going to hand over to Oscar right now.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning to everybody, or good evening. I don't know where you are at the moment, somewhere around the planet. So yeah, we will talk about transformation and about the future that will be beyond the future. And I don't know where you are and how you're living this amazing moment that we are not really expecting. And I want to really underline the word amazing, because I believe that this is a clear example of what I've been meaning for years, talking about future beyond the future. Basically, I'm in charge. I'm working for. I am going to introduce myself just to give you a small brief about me. I'm in charge of I'm the Chief Innovation, Sustainability, and Value Strategy Officer of one of the largest banks in Italy. I've been spending also a lot of time, many years, actually 15 years, traveling the world in 4 of the 5 continents, spreading the voice about new ideas about future. And this is something that I've been doing personally. I write books, I have a blog, and I write on magazines and newspapers, and I give talks around the world. And also I founded lately a startup, an innovative startup that is taking care of innovability. And I'm going to talk to you also about innovability. But at the beginning, briefly, I want to give you a provocation and I hope a suggestion about the future beyond the future. Paul Valéry used to say many, many years ago, centuries, that the future is not going to be what it used to be. And in these days, I believe that this sentence, this aphorism is really, really actual. I remember that in 2014, I had the chance to meet His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And I had the chance to ask him if it was true, a sentence that it was actually supposed to be one of these sentences. You know, most of the people that we talk about on the web, when we share sentences of famous people, they are dead. So we don't really know if Einstein really said something, Gandhi really said something. So I asked him if it was true, this sentence. They're not lucky or unlucky human beings, just human beings who know or who do not know how to read the stars. So the capability of human beings is exactly this: how to read the stars, how to connect the dots in our personal and in general sky. So by 2020, 2030, and 2045, there should be this future, this new future appearing on the scene. These dates has been used by and has been considered by the World Economic Forum and by many other researchers as times where new scenarios would have appeared. So the time came. And to give you a brief perspective, I'd like to share with you which would be the four main drivers who are going to reshape the entire planet. It was really weird talking about this stuff last year, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, and to see how everything is really happening fastly right now. So basically, the first driver is going to be demography. The planet is going to be reshaped totally, 100%, by new movements of people on the planet. It's really hard to get the right importance of this new change. We are the last generation of humanity went colonizing the planet from the center of the world that was considered Europe, up west in the North America, southwest in South America, Far East. Now everything is going to change. There will be 1 billion of people moving from the southern part of the world up to the north. And you should go and look at the numbers of the main cities that will be on the planet in the future. By 2050, 2075, the source is World Economic Forum, we may have the 10 biggest cities on the planet, all based in Africa. We are talking about 100 millions of people living in Dar es Salaam or Kinshasa or some other places. So first, demography is going to reshape everything. And demography is not just population, it's also an economic approach to the new shape of the world. Second, there will be the technology, the environment. Environment, okay, it might sound already boring talking about the environment today, but we have to be very much concerned. The human footprint on the planet was really, really hard in the last years, and we destroyed, these are not fake numbers, these are true, 10% of the wilderness on the planet just in the last 25 years. So being responsible for the planet is something that belongs totally 100% to this generation, to this period of the story of humanity. So this condition is asking us a totally 100% new approach to life, to environment, to the planet. Third, technology. Technology is not just a matter of tools or devices. Technology has to be considered a new neurological approach to life. And talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, IoT, IoE, big data, all the sentiment analysis on the web is going to reshape our neurological processes. Talking with the neuroscientists could be very clear to all of you how our brain is going to change. We were not used to wear glasses when we were kids, and like our kids are doing, playing with the Nintendo or the PlayStation or whatever else. But those tools are reshaping most of their neurological processes. Their minds are going to work in a totally different way from ours. So there will be a world where we'll be living in 100% different from the world that we've been used to. So the way we'll take decision, we will feel responsibility, we will vote every 5 years in Italy, for example, is going to be totally reshaped by the use of technology and by the impact that technology will have on our brains. And then the fourth driver will be the most important one. After demography, after technology, after environment, there will be finally, thanks God, ethics, values, and new behaviors. We must. I used to say we have to, but now we must. And these days is very clear the idea of transformation. We must rethink what we mean by ethics, values, and behaviors, because this is the time, this is the most amazing time to be human beings. Never before, like in this moment, we had the chance in our hands and the possibility to reshape the entire thing. Now this is the time for responsible human beings, because talking about demography, for example, there will be different population meeting together. So the impact will be really strong. Now, it's the responsibility of human beings to give an orientation to this touch. I had the chance to meet the niece of the Mahatma Gandhi, Tara Gandhi. She's the daughter of the fourth son of the Mahatma Gandhi. She's 97, I believe. And Tara used to tell me, you know, Oscar, my grandfather, the Mahatma Gandhi, used to tell me, Tara, the speed doesn't make the difference if you go in the wrong direction. Now it's time. The time came to give the right direction. I'm so happy and grateful to be alive in a moment for humanity
Che?
where I was given the capability and the
Ma
possibility
cos'è che è, babbo?
to give my own direction to the world. So the time came for a new approach to innovation and a new approach to sustainability. We must understand that being innovative means the capability to reshape everything totally. We need a consciousness disruptive innovation, not just a technological one. And then sustainability. Quantum physics just discovered that we all are interconnected in a magnetic field. So if we are all interconnected, great. The time came to be responsible for every single thoughts, emotion, action of our life, because these thoughts, these actions, these emotions are going to contribute to the reshaping of the entire planet. So this is time for responsibility, the capability, the ability to give a response. It's time for a revolution of consciousness, not a revolution in the streets, revolution of consciousness. This is the best time for human beings to be alive. Simon, I can hear you. Sorry.
I've turned my mic back on, so that's fine. That's great. Thank you. That's a wonderful review, Oscar. So many things to kind of pick up on, but maybe one of the things that just has occurred to me because of the times that we've been going through recently is if we're having if as part of your address you're saying that we share so much, that we have a common humanity, and that we are all kind of in this together. It's occurred to me that we're also going to need new social structures.
Absolutely.
And by that I mean, are we going to need some kind of global response to things? It's occurred to me in the last 2 or 3 days that country after country after country has behaved just as a nation.
Yeah.
And not, they've closed their borders, they've done their own things. There's been no global response.
I mean, borders don't exist. It's just an intellectual construction for our brain to shape the planet. It has been for centuries like this. Fine, we have cultural borders, but on the planet there are no borders at all. So the time came finally to start a revolution of legacies. We have to rethink what a legacy is. Then will be time to rethink the organizational assets of the private sector, the public sector, of the entire planet. And then third step, we have to redesign the project master plan, the project of my life, of my company, of my country, of the planet, because I am an active part of the planet. Fourth step, budget, how to allocate money, where to put money, where it is important to put money today. Fifth, time, we have to reallocate our times. And in these days, it's so clear the importance of time. Sixth, culture. We have to rethink entirely the idea of culture. What do we mean by culture? Do we need an Italian culture, a German culture, a UK, US, French culture, or a planet culture? And then, seventh step, people. People. The human beings are the most evolved species on the planet. Actually, we didn't behave like that lately, but we still are. So back to basics, back to the essence. We have to be our own essence.
Yes, and something you said earlier about ethical struck me as something that we could also all get behind, that notion of an ethical revolution, as it were. And it's ethics is the one thing that joins us. It's the one thing that could drive progress forward if that became the centerpiece.
Absolutely.
We could ignore nationhood, but be driven by ethics.
You know, ethics and values, but we have to consider ethics and values on a universal scale.
Yes.
Because we have been able to kill in the name of God. I don't know if God really exists or not. Actually, I do believe, at least I believe in something higher and more inclusive. And let's call it God for example, and simplicity. And fine, we can't kill in the name of something that is bigger, higher, more inclusive than us. So values has to be, we can consider a value really a value only if it is universal. Otherwise, it's not a value. It's something belonging to my culture. But again, back to the history of humanity, we have been killed in the name of whatever. So, wow, let's catch this moment to not to survive, to live, not to survive, to live intensely, deeply, because the time really came, and I am so happy of it.
Yes, and in a strange way, this current threat and disaster that we're facing, because it affects all mankind, may be a remarkable catalyst for the things that you're talking about, for a reshaping of the way that we go about and approach our lives. It's not just medical, but it is a sort of fundamental spiritual reshaping.
Absolutely. You know what, Simon? We fell asleep for a very long time. Centuries. So now we must consider ourselves lucky to be part of that story where, you know, the hero came out. It's time to face the enemy. It's time to battle our war, and okay, let's do it, and let's do it in a peaceful way. Let's do it inside ourselves, staying with us, with our, and wondering what do we really want from our lives. We've been taught to be, that was important to be famous, rich, having many followers on Instagram, depending on the age, you know, and the culture. I'm not saying that were bullshit, but I'm just saying that, okay, there is something else, and we came on the planet to live this something else. And as an entrepreneur, as a writer, as a speaker, whatever. But what is the essence of life? So I think this is the question that we have to stay with for a long while in these months. And I'm sure that in a few months, we'll go out and we will find an unexpected world waiting for us. And there will be a new story to tell.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think? I mean, just on a sort of simple level for people, what do you think we can do individually that will kind of take us forward? What are the sort of, you know, steps that you think people can take? I mean, I find that kind of thing really difficult to kind of bring into my own life.
I'll be very provocative, but I think that the first step will be, is going to be hard. It's not going to be part of our culture, at least not of mine, but we should be grateful. We should be grateful for anything we were given. Even this moment is a gift. So let's stay with ourselves. Let's keep doing what we are doing. I'm sure that most of us, at least here in Italy, we are all interconnected. Just to work and to stay in touch with our relatives, our families. So back to the essence, back to the main questions, back to the main meanings, and being grateful. Then let's keep doing what we are doing, but from a new perspective, you know, looking at something that we are not looking at, that was already there. There is nothing new out there.
Yeah.
It's still the same. Just the eyes, they changed. So again, being grateful, gratitude is going to be one of the main values of the future. This is my very personal belief, but being grateful, feeling gratitude is going to be a very good beginning to restart, not in the next months when everything will be over, but today, here, now. This moment is the only gift that we are given at the moment.
Well, thank you, Oscar. That's been a wonderful review. We'll have many, many more chances to discuss these things in much more depth. But it's been so kind of you to come and kind of introduce these new ideas and to give us a kind of a platform this morning to take our discussions about transformation on. And so do stick around. I'm going to hand over to Christoph. I hope is online in Switzerland.
Thanks.
He is. There he is.
Simon.
There's Christopher. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Oscar,
Simon.
for those great thoughts, and we'll be back. Do stick around, and we'll come back to you in a moment.
I will follow you. Ciao, Christoph.
Yeah.
Take your time. Ciao.
Oh, hello, Christoph.
Can you hear me?
I can very well. Yes, very well. Well, great pleasure to have you live with us, Christoph. It's always so exciting to have, even though we're used to it, people from different nations, cultures, backgrounds contributing. That's always a great pleasure for me. And I just sort of introduce you briefly that you're based in Switzerland, CEO of World Vision Switzerland, which is a charity, a worldwide charity for children. And your background is also in conflict and negotiations and part of UN conflict teams. So if I've got that wrong, please put me right. But I think that's kind of where you're from, and perhaps you just give us a brief introduction to you and what you'll be here and talking about this morning.
Thank you, Simon. So yeah, welcome everyone who's watching. So right live from Zurich, where we are almost, where the situation is becoming challenging, increasingly challenging as we speak. And so I'm the CEO of World Vision Switzerland. So we are taking care of children in more than 100 countries around the world. So World Vision as a whole family, it's an international charity, is working in more than 100 countries. And we are really responding. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm really busy these days. So we are responding quite intensely all over the world to the corona outbreak or the COVID-19 crisis. And it is, it's an interesting time. It's a strong reminder of my years in conflicts. I worked for nearly 10 years in conflicts around the world. I've negotiated with some of the groups and rebels and whoever you name it that most of us would only know from the newspapers. And that's why, for me, a situation like this is not, in many ways, it's business as usual. Sad to say that. But I'm also impressed to see that in a country like Switzerland, because, I mean, I came back after my 10 years in conflicts and I worked on nearly every continent. And you think like, wow, I'm coming back to safe haven Switzerland. What would ever happen here? And suddenly, I see people going crazy in the supermarkets, trying to buy the last roll of toilet paper, and public transportation being entirely empty, nobody in the streets, restrictions increasing across the country to contain the outbreak of the virus. And in this case, yeah, it is a virus. In the past, the enemy was more, let's say, like more visible in the sense that it had usually a machine gun and a uniform. And this time it is one that could just affect each and every one of us.
As a global charity, what are the kind of things that have really been challenging you, and the way that you've been able to help and treat children in the face of all of this? What sort of things have you been having to cope with?
I think there's a couple of layers, and that's a great question. There's a couple of layers to that, and it's sometimes also hard to communicate in a country like Switzerland. I mean, I consider myself extremely privileged knowing that we have one of the best health systems in the world, and I think in the Western world, we take that very often for granted. that if any one of us is falling sick, we can go to the hospital. Actually, it's one of the key concerns here now. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they try to contain it so hard, is because the infrastructure is strong, yes, but if suddenly you had almost like, tens of thousands of people turning up at the hospital doors, you got a problem. And this is, I think, one of the factors that is very hard to deal with in the field, because I think, yes, of course, our focus are children, but we are focusing on entire communities. So we're working in nearly every country, and our focus is always the most vulnerable children. But we don't only work with children, of course, we work with entire communities. And what are these communities? Of course, they're older people, they're elderly people as well. And so as we know, for children in general, this disease is not a problem, but it is for older people. So of course, one of the advantages we have, World Vision is the world's largest water provider to humanitarian situations and in development aid. And one of the things that we have done for a very long time, almost in preparation to what is happening now, is teaching people around what is the right way to wash yourself. The simple things that everyone is saying now: wash your hands as often as you can, to mitigate the spread of the virus. And so we are trying to prepare the communities to be better equipped when it happens, for them to know better how. It is very often a change of mindset, and I see that now, just the efforts here in Switzerland, how hard they're trying to teach people certain ways of engaging, and basically actually not engaging, trying to stay away from each other, and therefore mitigate the risks of transmission.
Now, I know one of the things that you talk about is leadership and teamwork, and I just wondered what you felt about leadership in the current circumstances. What is there a role for leadership in communities? It seems that so much of this is being imposed top down with government edicts. What is a kind of a role? Is there a role for leadership, at a sort of lower level, at lower scale?
Yeah, I think, these days I think, and I speak a lot about leadership, and I give you a small example, small story. In in the communities that we're working with, and very often World Vision works and helps a community for about 10 to 15 years. And our role is not to make them dependent on aid. Our role is, on the contrary, to empower them. So our teams in the field are locals. They're not expatriates like myself. And I'm obviously also considered a local in my own country, leading the efforts from here. But very often what we're trying to do is in kind of youth clubs, we are trying to empower the youth to really speak up for the challenges and work hard to address certain challenges in their communities. I'll give you an example, and that speaks a little bit into the crisis that we're facing now and how children can be agents of change. Yeah, we call the children our ambassadors. There's, for example, a community in rural India that we've been working with for quite a while. And there's a young girl called Amira, and I think she's around 9 years old. And she really realized that people got a lot of problems with diarrhea, and they got sick because there were no toilets around. Traditionally, people were not used to that. So she started an entire campaign around the community and literally helped people to build the toilets, do the right constructions. All World Vision did is provided the material. So she took the leadership and she transformed the entire community. And if you look at the health indicators, of course, it changed drastically. Children were less out of school because they were not so sick. Just people, the whole community got healthier. So what I'm trying to say with that is one of the things that we are trying to really bring across. And I think that is what really gives also us a lot of strength, is the fact that we see local leadership, and not just leadership in what we would call, the leader of a village. It is the leadership that each person within a community actually has. And these children often take that extremely serious. But of course, they also need to be given that space and that empowerment that they actually can stand up as leaders.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic that what happens at a local level can have a real impact, and an immediate impact on people's lives and their quality of life. And because this is World Speech Day, and we're talking about speeches, I just wondered whether, I mean, I'm a big advocate of the way that speeches can share ideas, spread ideas, and then give people an opportunity to see a new way forward. I wondered whether, in any of your experience, you found that public speaking and speaking is a useful and indeed often critical tool to these local communities to getting change to happen.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And what I want to say to that is, let's not forget that many of the communities that, for example, we are working in, they're very, very remote. Very often literacy rates are quite low, in fact.
Yeah.
Of course, we're trying to increase that, but that means naturally, transmission, verbal transmission of information is the key. And basically it comes almost down also to speeches. These children will stand up in their classes and they will hold speeches. It's not any different to what we're doing right now. I mean, they're just standing in front of a class and they're helping to pass on information. Maybe their parents could never read and write. Maybe they're learning that now. But ultimately it comes all down to oral history, passing on of oral information. And that is incredibly powerful. And I'm often totally intrigued when I see these kids standing up and speaking in confidence to their communities. That's extremely powerful. And very often I also found that it so resonates with the people that are listening. But an interesting observation is, as human beings, we are very much drawn usually to pictures. We process visual information around 40 times faster than other types of information. So that's why the storytelling has become so important. What we are also teaching them is try to speak in stories, because people remember stories because they imagine them like images in their minds. Yeah. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, we had a fascinating presentation earlier in another program about visual rhetoric and the power of imagery to convey ideas. That was very, very interesting use of visual rhetoric. So I would be interested in exploring further the role of public speaking in aid, because I think it's an interesting kind of overlap. And it's, of course, fascinating. You just pointed out that for many rural communities, literacy isn't really an option. They just don't have the tradition. So the oral tradition is even more important, and it's something we can pick up on, I think, going forward.
And just an additional point, and sort of leading also through a crisis, I see this at the moment, leadership on many different levels. See, as I've been leading teams for nearly 10 years in conflicts, I realized the dynamics are very, very different than when you're leading sort of in, how shall I say, peaceful times back home. So, for example, the leadership that we have to exert right now in an organization that is finding itself addressing crisis is very, very different. We are working on crisis mode here now. Yeah. And it is very interesting to observe how different members in the team are taking on very strongly their leadership roles. And I always say to my team is a good leader is a good follower. Yeah. And the importance, I think, always is that everyone does become a leader within that. And I was just writing just before, as we started this talk, I was writing 3 points down that I found were incredibly helpful. And what it means about, as we speak about transformation, what is the personal transformation and what does it require to really become a top class leader? And really, again, if I talk about leadership, it doesn't have to be that you have a hierarchical position. No. But it means you take leadership really serious. And what I found now, I mean, as we see in a situation like this where we need to fast-paced change, it is be open for change is number one. Really, for the fact that no day is same than the one before. You know, that's what we see at the moment. The numbers are changing all the time. The emergency measures are changing all the time. The second part is listen, learn, and observe. Yeah, the important thing is really to be very, very open. So in my role, for example, I take, of course, the executive decisions. I have I'm much more stronger in my decisions now because the team really needs that. But at the same time, the important here is to really listen to the people that are around us and the situation that is around us to make what I always call an informed decision. And that comes with a lot of humility, because I think leadership is really about your position is second. You're there to, you have a role, but you basically serve a purpose. And that's what I found most important. So the purpose comes before my own persona. The third is learn to unlearn. I think, interestingly, if I look a lot about, back to a lot of my education, there's things that at the time everybody thought you really need to know this and you really need to learn that and this is how you have to be. Whereas today I think like, oh my God, I'm so, you know, I need to unlearn some of those patterns that I have, you know, that are part of my upbringing, because they're just not fit anymore for the world that we're living in. And they're sometimes actually counterproductive. So it is important to also have that agility to actually unlearn. And the last, and my fourth point, is to be able to live with a large amount of unknown. Now that we are in this situation, we don't know. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. The situation changes day by day. But this is something that, for example, when I was working in conflicts, our teams were always had to be prepared that every day might be different than the one before. It is conflict after all. So you can't predict, oh my God, you know, it's going to look like more or less the same in 2 weeks as it does, as it did yesterday. And I have to say, you know, that's in that sense, for example, a country like Switzerland has been spoiled. You know, we've been incredibly stable for so long. People did always long-term planning on everything. And I think this is what really shocks people here to some extent. Maybe shocks also the leaders to some extent, because it's not so easy to plan. You know, it is happening on a day-to-day. And that's why leaders by nature have to be able to live with a large amount of unknown information and decide as things, you know, go ahead. And that's why I truly think it is a changing moment for many of us in terms of questioning, you know, how have we been operating until now? And will we operate the same way in the future? I find these questions incredibly powerful, and we ask ourselves that very much in our organization. You know, like, for example, now we had to send everybody, or most of apart from a small core team, they're now in home office. Yeah, it's culturally not part of what we do, you know, but that's just the way we have to operate. We have to safeguard the staff, but we have to also make sure that they're not potentially spreading the virus on their way to work. By the way, I cycle into work, so I only cycle through a forest. But so the responsibility that leaders have is way beyond, actually, in a situation like this, way beyond of what we're responsible for our staff or our organization, but it is really the society at large.
Thank you, Christoph. Just one question, which always fascinates me, is about leadership, which is to be a leader presupposes that there are people following you. That's almost seems to be the definition of leadership. How do you get people to follow you in difficult situations?
That's a very good question. And it is important, you know, I just wrote a piece yesterday on leadership in these situations. And one of the points that I put down is be the commander. Yeah. So if you compare that with a ship, for example, you know, there is one commander and he gives the orders. Does it mean the commander has to be a tyrant? No, but it is important. And I find that the reassurance that the team gets from receiving clear orders, clear commands, is key. There is, you know, and I give you an example. One of the things that is really important to us is, and this is one of the things that I hated in the past when I was lower in the hierarchy of organizations, was there were often leaders who just did not communicate. So you think like, yeah, hopefully they're on the top, they will make responsible decisions that will be beneficial for everyone. Yeah. And then very often you were just confronted with a decision that you could not, maybe it was even the best decision, but you could not understand it. So one of the important things for me is, for example, I send out an email. I mean, we have every morning sort of the emergency team meeting up, discussing the tasks of the day and the challenges ahead and what's been happening in the last 24 hours. And then I send an email to the entire staff members, which contains basically an update on the information, but it also contains what are the next rules of engagement. Yeah, what has have to happen and what do people have to follow in the next time to come, and it changes almost every day.
Well, thank you, Christoph. That's been a fascinating review. Do hang around if you've got time, but I know you'll be immensely busy on many aspects of World Vision Switzerland. But it's been a great pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for contributing. It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing all of this, and
Great.
big goodbye all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Hello, Alessandro. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes. Hi, Christopher. Hi, Simon. Sorry.
No, great.
Nice
Well, we're still on the subject of transformation, and Alexandru his background is in IT and technology, largely, I believe, and based in Dublin.
Yes.
Where most of these things seem to happen now in terms of making real progress in so much of the online world. And I know you've been doing a lot of work in terms of organizational transformation, what it requires to get an organization. How do you embed new ideas in an organization? How do you get early adopters to move with you? So it'll be fascinating to get your insights on kind of from a very practical way how you build and create transformation. Thank you very much, Alexandru.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. So it's funny how change proves to be the only permanent reality. At the beginning of last week, I had many plans to travel the world, and last Friday the coronavirus changed those plans. Yes. So I had to adapt. Everybody had to adapt. I am working from home for the rest of the month, so it's the entire company. We've been recommended to work from home. So in the company that I work right now, we aim to be more agile, to deliver fast, and time to market is crucial. Market is changing constantly, and us as an organization, we need to transform in order to adapt to change.
Yeah.
And since the organization consists of individuals, we as employees of the company, we need to transform. We as people need to transform. And my theory is that personal transformation is crucial to company transformation. And as we know, change is permanent, and transformation starts with me as an individual. And you mentioned before the early adopters. There are 4 types of people in relation to change. People driving the change, the leadership, the ones setting up the vision. There are the early adopters, which are people believing in the vision, in the mission. The late adopters, they need more information. They have resistance to change. They have different opinions. And then people opposing change, which they really have an opposite vision to our vision. And as individuals, we are in all 4 categories, depending on the change and our personal preferences. And now let me talk a little bit about how this manifests in IT. So when I started my work in IT 20 years ago, it was back in Romania in Vodafone. Everything was new. Technology was new. People were new. Workspace was new for me. And I like it, and I adapted to change. I transformed. In my current company, technology is new, people are new, and workspace is new. And I like and I adapt to change. And one of the greatest quality of an individual is the ability to adapt and transform into a better version of himself. And I want to give an example. One of the biggest company I work for is Nokia. And Nokia ability to adapt brought them from a shoemaker, from a boots company, to the leader on the mobile manufacturer market. And their inability to adapt brought them from the first position to the position of a small challenger.
Yes.
Do you hear me well? Is the microphone all right?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by the Nokia lack of transformation, as it were.
I've been part of the team, and it was the last part of the Nokia word was continuous transformation, continuous uncertainty. And it was a lot. I learned a lot during those times, and I wanted to use it an example because I'm fascinated by them as a company. They adapt so many times. From they did so many things. TVs, they did boots, they did a lot of things, and then they become #1 phone manufacturer. And then in a time span of 3 years, they were out of the market. And I believe that it was because they didn't adapt fast enough to the changing market. And I think transformation is the key to success. And this is a ability of a company to transform is #1 key to success. And I think organizations should focus their attention on how to help people adapt to change and transform from personal to professional level. Because only personal transformation can lead to professional transformation. Otherwise, it will be a split in personality. If I'm not transforming personally, I will just act I'm transformed, but it's not real transformation.
Yeah.
When we go to work, we adapt. We become a new self, a new person. Sometimes a better person, sometimes a more organized person, sometimes more frustrated person. Depends on the job. Every one of us have reasons to be the way we are, and every one of us have the choice to behave the way we behave. And we choose to adapt, we choose to transform or not. So it's a personal choice. And organizations need to take time in order to produce personal transformation that leads to company transformation, that leads to company success. And I read numerous books on the subject, and actually one of my favorite books is called First Break All the Rules, and it's written by Buckingham and Coffer, and they are writing 12 questions in their book, how to help people be motivated, how to help personal transformation. And I'm going to read this question. I find them very insightful. The first one is, do I know what is expected of me at work? The second one, do I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right ways? The third one, at work, do I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day? And in the last 7 days, do I receive recognition or praise for doing good work? Does my superior or someone at work seem to care about me as a person? Is there someone at work who encourages my development? At work, do my opinions seem to count? 8, does the mission, purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important? Are my coworkers committed to doing quality work? do I have a best friend at work? In the last 6 months, has someone at work talked to me about my progress? And last one, this last year, have I had opportunities to learn and grow? One of the reasons I read this question is to see how personal
Yes.
the professional transformation and the professional motivation can be. If we go back, like the first one, do I know what is expected of me at work? Why do I want to know that? Because I want to have clarity. I want to be able to deliver. I want to be a good employee. Do I have the materials to do my work? Of course, if I don't have the materials, then how can I do my work? Then I'm not going to be able to deliver on my promise. And also even more personal, like do I have a best friend at work? That's a very personal motivator. And also, what was that one? Yes, does the mission purpose of my company make me feel my job is important? So it's very interesting how personal transformation can be. And yeah, I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating to see how actually it leads to individual transformation of a company, and success of a company leads back to each and every individual. And I'm not talking only about individual contributors. I'm talking about managers, senior managers, C-level executives. Everyone has the personal side, and it's very, very important to be aware of this when we are leading a company or when we are just, doing individual contributor work. So I would leave you. I want to conclude the part that I prepared for this speech, that organizational transformation is key to organizational success, and organizational transformation is highly linked to personal transformation. So
Thank you, Alexandru. And how do we get people to see that personal transformation is worthwhile to them? For instance, some people will think, well, it's only work. I'm me. I don't need to change. How do we persuade people in a way that we can learn from?
Yes, that's a very good question. I actually had a talk with one of my managers in my previous job, and I asked him, how can I be myself at work? Why do I need to be a different self when I come to work? Why do I have to pretend? And I think it's a personal responsibility to become aware, like, how am I different when I'm at work?
Yes.
And how to be yourself at work, to become aware and being more and more yourself at work, and find the things that you like, find the things that you appreciate. Now, how to persuade people or how to make people aware of that is, I think, to make them realize that the amount of time they spend at work, it's 8 hours, sometimes more. So it's an important time from their overall daytime. You spend 8 hours at work, out of 12 or 14 hours you are awake.
Yes.
So it's more than half. So if you're not yourself at work, then where can you be yourself? So I think making people aware that playing a role or not being themselves at work, it's not working for them. It's not working for their personal well-being, even, because if you have to pretend for 8 hours, that's a long time. 8 hours a day, I'm saying.
Yes.
That is a long time. So I guess what I'm doing in my role, I'm actually encouraging people to be relaxed and to be themselves, and to to create personal relationships. So that's what I'm doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So friendships matter at work as much as almost in terms of kind of building a business as almost professional expertise in some way.
Yes, I agree. I agree, because professional expertise, of course, it's important to do the job. But if you don't know something, you can Google. You can go to Google and find that information. But if you're not satisfied personally, then you will not give your best. So in order to give your best, it has to have a decent amount of personal satisfaction. And what I want to also underline is that in these 12 questions of what motivates people at work, none of them is salary or any financial remuneration.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. Of course, there is a minimum level, or medium level of salary that needs to be there. We all need to pay the bills and live a good life. But the highest 12 motivators are not financial related. And that's food for thought for me, like really what motivates us in this world.
Fascinating, Alexandru. Well, that's been a very, very interesting take on things, because you've emphasized what we sort of know but have never really kind of articulated it to ourselves, that it's always the person within that drives the without. It's about the way you feel and your interactions, personal interactions, that create a company, or not necessarily a company, but a society, a movement, whatever it might be.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Well, thank you, Alexandru. Do stay a while. I'm going to introduce Marta now, who's also from Switzerland, I believe, and she's going to be talking about personal transformation. So you may be able to get insights from Marta on personal transformation, because I think Marta's going to be a bit more provocative and say, is personal transformation possible? Which I think we're going to enjoy. And thank you so much, Alexandru.
Thank you, Simon, for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, Marta. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. And you're based in Switzerland, but have a very sort of different kind of background in terms of that you're not Swiss yourself, and you've worked in many different countries and different situations.
Not many different countries, but I come from Ukraine, and then I spent a few years in Poland, and now I'm here. So I can compare a little bit how the life is different.
Great. Well, we've lost a couple of presenters this morning, but it's great to have you on board, and I think you're going to be talking about personal transformation.
Exactly.
And whether that's possible.
Exactly. Yes. So, in my opinion, the personal transformation is an important part of our lives, and this is a natural process. First of all, starting from our childhood, we transform from a baby to a child to a teenager to an adult person to an experienced person, and this is a normal process on all levels: physical, psychological, emotional, intellectual levels. And the thing that we think about the personal development, on my opinion, sometimes is not exactly what it is. Let's take an example: the predictions of the future of the children. Yes, if we see an average child, which is not the best, but also not the worst in notes, in everything, what we can think of this person in the adult life, we think, yes, perhaps this person will be an average worker in some company, or most probably will not like this work, will not get some tremendous success. But after finishing school, university, let's say 5, 10, 15 years pass, this person has a successful career, successful relationships, many hobbies, interests, money. And this is something what we did not expect at the beginning. And on the other hand, we have a child who looked like a person who will definitely get everything from life, because since the childhood, this person was a great leader and could get anything by just blinking eyes and just saying what they want. And we expect this person to become a mayor of the city, a president, an owner, a CEO of some successful companies. And in the same 5, 10, 15 years, it turns out that this person is an average employee of some company and perhaps does not like this job. So what could go wrong and what went correctly in the first case? Who is to blame or who is to be thankful for? And this is, I think, is one of the most popular words, even though for people who do not speak English, I think it's not such an easy word to pronounce, but this is the circumstances, which we like to blame on or to be thankful for the success. But usually there are excuses for what is happening and how the life is changing. We say, I was too young or I was too old to do this, but someone was too old or too young and this person succeeded. I was from a rich family or from poor family and that's why I didn't get this. But someone was from a poor or rich family and then they had the success. But in fact, not always, of course, but in many cases, we can influence these circumstances to change and to build our lives. This is how I feel, how I see the personal transformation, that I don't like to accept it, to think of it as a change of life, but also as a building of life. And the 5, 10, 15 years after graduating the university, it's not the end. This is just a process, the same as we build the building. At first, we have just a piece of the wall with bricks, which we can say it looks ugly compared to the whole building, which is in the end with all the decorations, with colors and paintings and so on. So I think the life is the same. And the things that can mislead us sometimes are the very casual words which we hear from all around. And even Alexandra was mentioning it. This is, in my opinion, this is the motivation, and sometimes this is the thing which misleads us because we don't understand this correctly. Usually we get motivation from some external sources, and we don't realize that this is something which helps us only for really short term. And if we don't get the goal in 5 minutes, then we are disappointed and we look for the new motivation for the next 5 minutes and the new motivation for the next 5 minutes and so on and so forth. And instead of enjoying the process, we are just looking for some additional help to do something. As a creative person, I think that in this case, we could apply more to inspiration, which allows us to stick to work on something for a really long time, because only inspiration allows us to spend many years on creating the masterpiece. So to creating the masterpiece of our lives, what we will think that is a masterpiece, a great life, not what other people think and what other people say. Because I wouldn't say that the average worker in some company it's bad and you always have to be successful CEO or something. It's not bad, because if you like your job, even if this is the lower layer of the hierarchy, but it makes you happy, this is amazing, because not all CEOs are happy in the world. Not happy in the world. Yes, so this is what I wanted to say, to make this all together. So for me, the personal transformation is about enjoying the process of building life, not changing life. And the process is sometimes more important than the goal. Like a little example from my life, because I did it a lot of times in my life. I got some experiences and some skills. And one of the recent, a few months ago, I started to learn how to sing. And usually why people learn to sing, because they want to form a band or to be as good as Adele, Lady Gaga, and to earn money in the future. For me, it's not the goal. I just enjoy the process, that now I sound a bit better than I sounded a few months ago. And even the funny example that the dog of my flatmate a few months ago when I was singing was going out of the room. Now when I start to sing, she comes to the room and stays there. So this is not a huge goal, and I cannot put this on my CV or on my LinkedIn, but this is something what makes me glad and happy and brings me joy. So this is what the personal transformation for me is. It's a real process, but this is the problem of building, not the process of changing.
Yeah, I get that. I get that it's the process, that we should find happiness in taking, and to use your example, taking on new things, learning an instrument, learning a language, learning how to sing, learning how to swim, and that it isn't really the goal of being a great swimmer or a great musician, but simply finding happiness in that gradual build of skills that you can see happening and developing, and that contributes to our happiness. So the interesting idea there is that transformation comes from seeking out transformation. Do you see what I mean? That by seeking out small threads of change in your life, you do transform the whole thing.
I wouldn't say that you transform the things, because when you add additional skills, you add them, you don't change. The fact that you learn how to swim, it didn't change you. Right. It only made your the building of your life made a bit full. Like, as you put a balcony in your house,
yes,
this is the new skill which you have learned. You put the new window, the new door, you build a new floor on your apartment, and you are building, you are not changing it completely, because what we learn and how we develop, it's only building, adding something more to this fundament, what we are.
So you don't think that we can change the fundamental?
There are, of course, exceptions, when usually this is when people have some circumstances, have something what influence them. But I think the only thing which can change us is something from the inside, and it will not change us completely. If we tend to be always happy and always jolly, then we will always be there. And for example, as there were speeches about public speaking, and I think if you are as a person, you are happy and jolly, you will always have your presentations, even if it is a boring, informative presentation, you will always have it with some fun, with some interesting twists, and even the boring presentation can be interesting and funny. And on the other hand, if the person is very holds everything to himself or herself, then this person can learn how to be humorous speaker and everything, but it will be something additional. It will not change. The person will still be calm and a bit to herself or himself, but will be able to be funny and jolly and open when it is needed.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Marta. I take great store by that notion of the process being, the goal, the process of being what one enjoys. So thank you very much for your insights, and it's been a great pleasure to have you contribute. And sadly, as I say, we've had a number of cancellations relating to people's movements and coronavirus and not being able to attend. So we're going to probably cut this particular broadcast short and start again in about 40 minutes. We've got some contributors from New York. David Biello from TED is joining us at 2 o'clock GMT. So I'm going to stop the broadcast now, and we'll go back on air at 2 o'clock. But I did want to say very many thanks, Marta, for coming
Thank you.
being
Thank you for inviting me.
for Switzerland, and we'll, I'm sure, have more discussions about personal transformation.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye.
Cheerio. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's about it for this particular session of World Speech Day on Transformation. Sadly, a number of contributors from Africa have not been able to make it this morning, although they're on the schedule. I may be able to pull them in later this afternoon. I hope so. But we'll be back at 1400 GMT with David Biello